Right, hello everyone. My name's Chris Hewitt, and this is a Camel Trophy 40th anniversary special interview with Tim Postgate, who represented Camel Trophy, represented UK in Camel Trophy Guyana 1992. Hello, Tim, or should I say good day because you're joining us live from Australia?
Yep, good day from down under. It's the middle of the night over here at the moment, so but happy to be involved.
So what I'm going to do is take you back to Guyana in 1992. I was reading a newspaper cutting just before this interview, and it described that Team UK, which was you and Gareth Hansford, had an excellent performance on the opening day of Camel Trophy and went into first place with an unassailable lead of 9 points. Then the next couple of days was sort of like a battle between you and the French team. Tell us, how did it go after that?
Yeah, well, the way the Camel Trophy then was organised, the first couple of days, like 48 hours, was all the special tasks, pretty much against the clock, and you really didn't get any sleep at all, just an odd hour here and there. And yeah, you're right. Us and the French, we were dicing for the lead in the special tasks through the first 48 hours there. We came out ahead with a slim lead at the end of that first session. Then there's like a 2-week sort of convoy period, and then another 48 hours near the end of the competition to decide, do the final tasks and dice it out. And we were always neck and neck with the French. You know, we'd win one over them and they'd win one back and that. And it all came down to the wire. The last 2 events, I think, they didn't tell us what the results were until they announced it right at the end. And sadly, the French got 197 points. We got 196. So it was that close. It was very, very nail-biting and frustrating, obviously, not to win that award. But fair play on the French guys. So
perhaps you could tell us a little bit about the special tasks and what you were kind of challenged with in those competitions.
Sure. Well, the Camel Trophy then was very much based in the vehicles. So we had Land Rover Discovery 4-door diesel, and so most of the tasks you always had to start in the vehicle and finish in the vehicle. But in between there'd be some winching, or there might be a bit of orienteering to go and fetch something like a spare wheel, for example. We'd get a grid reference to a spare wheel, and one of us would have to run off down the hill, collect a spare wheel, run back up another hill and meet up with the vehicle that's also gone round a bit of a course. So very much teamwork between the two competitors in the team. And the hardest thing really was the heat and humidity in the Amazon rainforest. It's just absolutely stifling. And I think all our training happened in East Newcastle and in the southwest of England in the depths of winter here. So we were acclimatized to cold weather and snow and rain, and we trained for pretty much everything, but we just couldn't train for the heat and the humidity, and so that was the biggest shock to the system, really. Very, very different. It was like someone had when we stepped out of the airport, which was air conditioned, into Manaus, it was like you were standing in front of the extract fan from a commercial kitchen, you know, just unbelievably hot. But yeah, I'll give you another example of a special task, which sounded like a really, really simple one, but ended up, we actually won it quite comprehensively, but you just had to get your car from A to B around or across a very, very boggy area. And all you had to help you couldn't really use your winch because there was nothing to winch from. But we did have the sand ladders that you see bolted on the side of the roof rack. We had 2 of those on each side, and at the start line, there were 4 more of those just dumped on the floor next to the start line to help us. So we had 8 of those sand ladder things. I guess they've been replaced by max tracks and treads these days, but those kind of things. And we'd actually practiced this kind of thing in our training as well. And so what we did that helped us win it was we laid the tracks down, so you put 2 behind each rear wheel and 2 in front, 2 in front of each rear wheel and 2 in front of each front wheel. But you can only drive forward about 6 foot, 8 foot along those things before you fall off into the mud. So we needed to just drive forward a little bit. And we did that by, instead of the driver jumping back into the car every time and using the clutch and moving forwards, I just leaned in through the window and key started it in gear, in the first gear low range, wound it along the 8 foot and then keyed off again. And then we moved the sand tracks around in front, did the same again. So we basically just keyed on, started it, keyed off as we were walking alongside the car. And yeah, we won it by miles, that particular task. So yeah, using your brain was definitely an advantage. And the training we got was good. We were pretty lucky in the training because we had Bob and Joe Ives who'd won it in '89, and we had some of the other competitors, previous competitors as well, Andrew Dacey and Tim Dray and Andy Street. So yeah, we had a lot of experience to draw on, and yeah, it went well.
Cool. So after that initial stage of special tasks, you then went into the convoy, which lasted a good couple of weeks. And I guess that's where all the iconic pictures have come from, the iconic footage. That's what people think of when they're talking about Camel Trophy. So I guess that's what we'd really like to hear about, is what happened on the journey between Manaus and Georgetown.
Yeah, okay. So as you know, it's a convoy and you're not against the clock, but there is a bit of a schedule to keep to. Some areas are obviously more difficult to maintain a schedule than others. So I think we had the equal longest single day distance covered, which was I think 640 kilometres in the one day. But that was mainly on a gravel road, so that was really easy going. But nonetheless, you're on the road for quite a long time, and it gets tiring. But then there was another day when we made 8 kilometres in an actual 24-hour period, where we were even winching downhill, not because it was too steep to drive down. We weren't lowering ourselves down. We were physically winching ourselves forward down the hill because the mud and the ruts were just so deep, and it was raining as well at the same time. Yeah, you couldn't drive forwards down the hill. It was that muddy. Yeah, imagine there's 2 of you in the team, but we also had 2 journalists in the back seat for the whole event, kind of embedded journalists on the front line. We had a chap called Howard Lees, and he'd been on the previous event actually with Tim Dray and Andy Street in Tanzania, Burundi. So he was actually a good help to us from a sort of knowing what to expect, or at least he wasn't thrown in the deep end, so we didn't have to nurse him along. He could look after himself as well. The other guy was a chap called Tim Russon, who was from Central News, I think, back in those days in the Midlands, and he was a good guy as well. And yeah, he was dying to get stuck in, but by his own admission, he was no driver or four-wheel drive expert at all. But he was very happy to get on the end of a spade when we needed to dig mud out of the way. Because on the convoy section, your journalists are part of your whole team. There's 2 journalists in the back of every car, so everyone mucks in then. And there were 16 teams in our event, so 4 people from 4 in each car, 4 in each team, effectively for the convoy section. So when you're building bridges and stuff, those extra pair of hands definitely help. And Howard actually, rest his soul, he said he was always desperate to actually take over the driving. He was gagging to get into the front seat and drive. Yeah, we had to let him on a couple of occasions on some of the convoy sections, but yeah, it was quite a fight to keep him out of that season.
I think we often think of the Camel Trophy teams being the national pair, kind of the two men and women competing for their team, but it seems that it's much wider than that, and not even just the car full, because presumably on the convoy you need to cooperate with the other vehicles in the convoy. Did you form a particular kind of relationship or a particular team with any other nationalities, or did you come across everyone kind of over the progress of the convoy?
Yeah, look, you can't help but mix with everyone, but ultimately, where it's really difficult, if you're in a section like a steep muddy hill and there's 4 vehicles stuck there, then you're going to work for several hours with those 4 teams and get to know them better. I suppose English is the kind of the common language on the events, but obviously people speak in their native tongue as well. So where you get Spanish speakers, for example, they'll naturally have an affinity to other Spanish speaking, and the same with the English speaking ones. But everyone's in it for all the right reasons, and they've been selected, I guess, as teamwork, team players. So you really get to know everyone on the whole convoy. But you're absolutely right. The 16 teams, you get to some obstacles like rivers or just small rivers where there's a bridge, a wooden bridge over it, and it's rotted out and it's washed away. There might still be some logs and stuff there that are falling in, and you certainly don't want to risk 20 vehicles going across it. So you're out with the ropes and the pulleys and the winches, and it's all hands on deck until you build a bridge across the river. And our training helped us to know how to construct bridges that will take vehicles across, and the sort of size of logs that you need for the kind of weight that we're dealing with. But still, it's an engineering feat that you've got to do in the jungle, sometimes at night with just a head torch and some headlights vaguely shining through the rain. And those kind of engineering feats, like the logs that you use, they're heavy, they're dangerous, and there's a lot of risk involved. So everyone wants to sort of jump in and lead, and everyone's got a good idea, and so it's one of those situations where there's loads of chiefs, and you really need a lot of workers to actually get things into position. So, but no, the first few days are a bit chaotic, and then once everyone got to know each other and you get into the swing of things, you kind of get into that rhythm of, there's another bridge washed out, right? There's some logs over there we could use. We need some ropes from the support vehicle. Right, let's get 10 people on this side, 10 people on this side, and we're going to put that log over there. We're going to have to winch it from that tree, that sort of thing. And you really saw the teamwork and the expertise really just build up and start to work like a well-oiled, muddy machine. So that it was really nice when that kind of happened, and things just ran much smoother when that sort of clicks into place.
You said that quite often there'd be a lot of chiefs and you might need some more workers. Where did you kind of fit in? Did you have a particular area of expertise that kind of shone out, or were you a jack of all trades? How do you kind of like find your place in that team on the convoy?
Yeah, I guess it's Well, I'm an engineer anyway, so I've got a decent grasp of pulley ratios and how to move heavy weights around and that kind of thing, what can go wrong, and trying to think ahead of what might go wrong, where we're going to need to maybe shave off the edge of the tree trunks to get vehicles up, and measuring the track width of the vehicles as well, to make sure it's going to track straight across, you're not going to suddenly drop between the logs and that sort of stuff. I guess where do you fit in? In terms of the sort of the leadership, I guess I like to think I took control of some of the situations and just became one of the workers in other situations. In a lot of those cases, though, the first couple of vehicles to get to the obstacle tend to become the leaders for that particular issue. Just kind of because they've got there ahead of time, they've sussed out where the things are, and then there's always people firing suggestions, but yeah, after a few days it became less chaotic. You'd sort of establish a leader at each event or each obstacle, and then we'll work together for that.
And how many kind of bridges would you say you had to build over the course of a couple of weeks? I mean, I guess if you're only doing 8 kilometers one day and 600 kilometers the next, that might be very variable. But how many times would you have to repeat this progress?
Overall, bridges, we probably built about 6 bridges in the convoy section, I guess. But there's also a bit of other obstacles, like where we had. Well, I'll give you an example. In the middle of the afternoon one day, we came across. We were just driving up a muddy hill in Guyana, and we came across an old ex-army, like a Bedford 4x4 4-tonner truck, an old army truck that was loaded up with supplies, and he was bogged to the chassis in the ruts ahead of us. And there were 2 guys with the vehicle, and we couldn't really get past. There's hardly any room, so we had to get out and basically dig ourselves a trail around the outside. And then we got talking to the 2 guys that were with the truck. They'd been there for at least a week because they got bogged, and they got plenty of supplies with them because that was their job. So they were doing a supplies run to the nearby villages and trying to get the last run in before the wet season really hits. And we're arriving just as the wet season hits, and they've just been unlucky. They got bogged, couldn't get themselves out. They ran their batteries flat, so they couldn't restart the vehicle. So that was it. They were camping there. They got plenty to eat and drink, but they're just going to stay there until someone comes along and helps them, or the road dries up enough. But they could never restart their vehicle without batteries. So when we got there, we got a few of the batteries out of our Discoveries and hooked them up together, jump-started their vehicle, and helped dig their vehicle out. And then once we got their vehicle out, we left them to it, but with their vehicle actually running. I think we left a couple of batteries with them as well, so they could definitely get going. And we obviously couldn't go through the same ruts that they'd gone, so we dug a little bit of a road around the outside of his bogged area and carried on. But yeah, those 2 guys, different attitude to life compared to us Westerners. They're in it for as long as it takes. They live out of the truck, and if wherever the truck stops, that's their home. It was really amusing. We came across quite a few local characters. We did a raft crossing at one of the rivers. I think it might have been the Potamo River. Can't quite remember. Anyway, so we got the raft unit out, and the trip across the river I don't know, probably, well, it's this behind us, this picture behind. In fact, I think you can see me with a lot more hair. It's like then and now.
You haven't changed a bit.
Yeah. I still fit in the shirt, but it was pretty baggy at the time. So, but yeah, we came to this river crossing, and we all had to stop in the little village that's at the side of the river, and then we had to build up the raft unit and get that running, and it would only take one vehicle at a time, and each crossing took probably 15 minutes to go across, and then they had to unload and come back, so another 15 minutes to do that turnaround. And with 20 odd vehicles in the convoy, obviously that takes a long time, and you've got to refuel the boats and that sort of thing. So yeah, and then Bob Ives managed to reverse off instead of going forwards. So there was a bit of a recovery job on the other side for his Marshall vehicle. But whilst we were spending a lot of time in that village, there was a fried chicken shop, really, which was just built from logs and raffia matting and a deep fat fryer. And I reckon we ate the village's chickens probably. It's a good job the supply truck was behind us, because I think we ate them out. But I think their prices doubled at least whilst we were there.
So a good day for Camel Trophy and a bad day for chickens.
Yes, yes, indeed. I reckon the restaurant owner, he probably retired for the rest of the year and made all his profits. But we also met a local guy and got talking to him, and he introduced himself as Cocaine Conran. He said, anything you want, I can get it helicoptered in. Middle of the jungle. Yeah, it was.
It might help you on those longer days.
Yeah, I imagine so. Yeah.
So, maybe we'll move away from what you put up your nose and maybe go back to the cuisine. When it wasn't fried chicken every day, I presume. What were how do you sustain yourselves and a convoy? 2-3 weeks in the jungle. Was the food provided, or did you kind of have to be self-sufficient?
So we bought all our basic rations before we left the UK, and we went through. Well, I partially blame Howard, because he said, it's best if we keep the vehicle light, for getting through the mud and stuff. So we did some sort of OCD type calculations about what we needed and how long we were going to be there and that sort of thing. So we rationed ourselves, and those dehydrated food in the bag. You get a stew or a porridge. You can get curries and everything. So we got a selection of those, and we budgeted ourselves for a bag of porridge in the morning, one bag of food meal at lunch, and one bag in the evening, for every day that we were there, for each one of us. And then we added about 10% on top of that for provision. We had a box of raisins each per day, 2 muesli bars each per day, and we took some polo mints. I can't remember who it was. It snaffled away some polo mints and snuck that into their suitcase. So we had some polo mints on the journey, and on the first day we got through like 2 packets. So we decided, shit, we're going to have to ration these because we haven't got very many. So we said, right, this is the rule. We're only going to have a polo mint each on the hour, every hour. And it was like Pavlov's dogs. We're all dribbling at 5 minutes to the hour, all drooling and dreaming of polo mints. And because the vehicle was bouncing around all the time, we put a piece of Velcro around the polo mint tube, and we stuck it to the dash so it wouldn't fall off. But yeah, it was funny. And then when we looked at some of the other teams, they really had not paid any attention to the idea of rationing. And I remember the Canary Islanders. really good guys they were, but they had woks and cooking pans and all sorts of things in their vehicle, and fresh fruit all the time, and fresh vegetables, and just heaps of food. And they were cooking up gourmet pasta dishes and things every evening. And there was Team UK just boiling up some water to pour into the bag and then scooping away at some dehydrated goulash or something. It was, we did substitute or get some local fruit and vegetables along the way as well, but yeah, to spice it up. But it was the source of a lot of amusement. Oh, we did have a lot of tea, lots of tea bags, because an Englishman can't run out of tea in the jungle. Just what you need.
Yeah, South America is not great for tea, and maybe the coffee's better, but the tea certainly is rotten from my experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm wondering about the French. I imagine the French team probably had their own chef. They probably had like a chef in the Discovery.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if one of their journos wasn't a gourmet chef. Yeah, I mean they're French, so they're probably all gourmet chefs themselves. So they're certainly their dinner was a lot better looking than ours was. We had a few. You know, you think, oh, we're travelling through the jungle. When you need to stop at night, you'll find a nice flat area to pitch your tent and get on with it, crack a fire, and have your meal and everything. And very occasionally that was possible, but there were occasions we just literally had to stop in the middle of the track and put your tent up behind your vehicle, because the jungle was so close on both sides and so thick, you just couldn't put a tent down in the jungle. The only open space, clear space big enough for a tent was the road, well, the mud, the mud track that we were on. And there was one time I specifically remember, and we'd done that. We'd parked and we'd put our tents behind the vehicle. And in the morning, I got up for my my morning visit, I suppose. I picked up the shovel and the toilet paper and headed off over. There was a bank actually on our left-hand side, so I climbed over the bank. It was lots of trees. Over the bank, a discreet distance away from the rest of the convoy. Took myself a little hole and just settling down to enjoy enjoy the early morning. And I heard something out of my right, off to my right, up in the trees, and there was a sort of a doo, 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 and some branches sort of crackling, like something was moving around. That's a bit odd. And then something made a thump on the floor over to my right. Oh, what's that? We heard some howler monkeys last night, so I was worried maybe it was one of them. And then about 5 meters further over, the same thing happened. Doo, 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 boom! I was thinking, crikey, it's the monkeys. They don't like. I must be in their home or something, digging holes. So I quickly, pulled myself together and moved about 20 meters off to the left, and did what I needed to do, and I walked back to the camp. And I mentioned this to Gareth and Howard and Tim, and I was describing this. Must be the howler monkeys, and they just cracked up laughing. They'd seen roughly where I'd gone, and given me a couple of minutes to settle myself in, and then they'd been throwing things, sticks or something, up into the trees near me.
I'm sure you had your revenge on them at later points.
Yeah, I probably did.
So we've talked about the convoy. We've talked about how you cross small rivers by building a bridge. You've shown us the picture of obviously going across the larger river on a raft unit. Presumably the raft unit was one that you brought along in the convoy, or was it a local construction?
No, it was brought in the convoy. I think it was spread over a couple of vehicles. But yeah, the raft units, the two vehicles I think that carried the raft, I think it was back in those days, I think it was a high capacity pickup, carried most of it, and with the aluminium ladders, you might be able to see, I'm not sure, on there. But the raft unit was a very heavy vehicle, so it took quite a bit more skill and expertise to get it through some of the obstacles that we were going through. And what we also found was that the Discoveries, they've got a shorter wheelbase than the 110s, and so some of the obstacles were easy in the Discoveries, but the 110s could ground out, you know, in the belly particularly, or if there was a sharp turn, they didn't have the same turning circle, so they couldn't quite get round. So we had to adjust some of the tracks and the modifications that we did, and some of the bridge entries and things, just to suit both sizes of vehicle. But yeah, so that was the raft unit. We did use some other boats. There was one river crossing, the Essequibo, I think it was, where we used a local pontoon boat, where they take the trucks and pedestrians across the river. We hopped on there with our vehicles. That was fine. And then we actually got a chance to go to the Kaieteur Falls, which is the largest single drop waterfall, I think, at least in South America, if not the world. But that involved a whole day. We had to get into some local boats. I think we had 3 boats, and it was like a refugee boat, if you pardon the expression, but it was well overloaded, right down. We must have had about 2 inches of freeboard to the river, and they just had a little outboard motor on the back, maybe a 25 horsepower outboard motor, and 2 locals to drive the boat. And it was, I think it took about 3 hours to get up the river in these things, actually on the river. And then we get to some rapids, and we had to go up the rapids. So we couldn't do that in these wooden boats. So we had to cart the boat, just get it out to the side, and physically lift it and manhandle it over the rocks up at the side of the river, and carry the outboard motor up there and the fuel and everything, and then plop it all back into the water and then get on again. So I think it took us about 6 hours to get there, a bit quicker to get back because it was downriver. And then once we got to the base of the falls, it was about a 2-hour hike to get to the top of the falls. But the falls were just tremendous. And when we got to the top, there's a small old hotel up there with a helipad. So if you've got sufficient funding, you can fly in there, land and see the top of the falls, and sit on the there's a little triangular edge that sticks out over the edge of the Kaieteur Falls, which you may have seen in some of the books. There's Camel Trophy books generally have a picture of that, of us there. And at the top of that Kaieteur Falls, there's a little plaque in the rock, which outlines a story of a soldier from the Black Watch regiment from the UK years and years ago, had actually swum across the river at the top of the falls. So it was, if he hadn't been a good swimmer, he'd have got swept over the falls. I don't know why he did it, probably just a dare from his mates, but yeah, quite a spectacular place to do a swim across the river, because it's, I don't know, 750 feet or something vertical drop if he got it wrong.
Yeah, I imagine that was a close run thing. You didn't fancy a dip yourself?
Well, we all had a dip, yeah, because it was so hot. But we didn't go across the river. No,
Didn't go near the edge.
No way.
Okay, so the event itself ended in Georgetown in Guyana. I guess there was another set of special tasks before some sort of, I'm imagining some sort of grand closing ceremony and an announcement of who's been successful. Did you know how kind of like the team standings were towards the end of the event? Was there everything to play for?
Yeah, so the last number of special tasks, we knew the scores of the first few, but the last two they didn't tell us. So by then we pretty much knew it was between us and the French team, and but we couldn't tell which. So we gave it our best shot, and I don't think we could have done any better in the last couple of tasks. So yeah, so we didn't know. And the Team Spirit Award is voted for in a closed voting system, so nobody's got any idea of the Team Spirit Award by that stage. And then the overall is a combination of the two. So yeah, so we had some idea, well, 50-50 chance on the competitive task part, and no idea about the rest. So yeah, it was a big surprise. Well, obviously, a big surprise at the actual ceremony, the closing ceremony. Big spectacle, big song and dance with the stage, and the local government official came out, and yeah, it was an amazing party. Of course, we were all completely knackered by then, but nonetheless, it was great to celebrate.
I imagine probably one of the best things was to get into a clean set of clothes and have some food that wasn't dehydrated out of a bag.
Yeah, and have a shower. Just having a nice, cool shower with soap, and yeah, just cleaning off the 3 weeks of bathing in rivers with yeah, and sweating buckets and getting.
And you could finish off the polo ration. Did the polo ration last the entire convoy?
It did, yeah. But we after the special tasks, we tore through them before we pulled into Guyana, into Georgetown. So no polos were left behind.
So perhaps we can move on from Guyana for a moment and kind of return to kind of like the theme of the interview about what it takes to be selected for Team UK. And you know, as someone who represented the country, you probably would have, anyone from Camel Trophy who were representing their country would have an idea of why they were selected. But you sat on the other side of the selection panel and saw it from another view as well. So perhaps you could talk us about your involvement in selection and what you were looking for.
Sure. So in the UK, I think worldwide actually, generally the selection panel is a combination of previous competitors for that country, and there'll be some other people in that committee as well. But so I think all of the UK team members were asked back the second year, the year after they've done their event, really to pass on their experiences from that most recent Camel Trophy, because the Camel Trophy did evolve and a few things changed. So so Gareth and I got invited back to assist with the 93 selections. And you're right, it was very different. Looking at it from the other side, you kind of get a different view. Yeah, what struck me really was that it wasn't so much, well, I guess overall we were looking for people that maintain their effectiveness and their sense of humour when everything's gone wrong, sort of thing. So when they're cold, wet, tired, hungry, thirsty, covered from head to toe in mud, whatever, and there's a task ahead of them that looks like it's impossible. And for them to be able to get their head around the whole situation and still be effective in a team environment, sort of thing. So that's kind of what we're aiming for. And then the skills of, even the skills of off-road driving and mechanics of, you know, fixing vehicles and stuff, building bridges and that kind of thing. Most of that you can teach, you know, if they're of the right sort of mindset, you'll be able to teach them enough for them to be going on. But it's very hard to teach someone to be rational and effective and have a sense of humour when you've just woken them up for the 4th time that night, to get them into a tent, sit them down at a desk and give them a maths test, you know. And then you send them back to bed, and then an hour later you wake them up again and you go for a run up to the obelisk at Eastnor Castle, and then back to bed, give them another hour's kip, and then get them up again. So the 3rd time they get woken up, and, you know, and one of my selections, so I guess taking a step back, I applied for the 91 event originally and got into I was reserved that year and then reapplied in 92. But I particularly remember one of the tasks that we did was we were woken up in the middle of the night and we had to run up about 2 miles up into the forest at Eastnor Castle, where there was a vehicle that had the engine switched off, and the scenario was that the vehicle had broken down in this muddy bog. You can only use manpower to get this vehicle out. We need to get it out so we can actually fix it. And it's the middle of the night. We've had about an hour and a half's kip, and we're all tired anyway from the previous day's exertions and log race and things. And yeah, just being able to keep a fresh mind, think logically, and get it done in an efficient manner and safe as well. There's that kind of thing that we're looking for. We being a selector, part of the fun of it was dreaming up those kind of tasks as well. We all got a chance to come up with an idea for a special task to test our candidates. So that was always fun, trying to think up some devious thing that will test the people. And then being the newest kid on the block into the selector panel, that meant you got the rough deal for the night shifts. So it'd be us, Gareth and I, getting up for the 2 o'clock in the morning session, and then we'd still have to get up for the 6 o'clock morning run and other tasks. So it was good. I think when, in general, you get a lot of applications through the post, and we were involved in some of the selection of those people. And it's a bit harsh, perhaps, but it's very difficult to assess someone from a piece of paper. And so that bit I didn't like doing. But once you get the short list of people onto a weekend for selections, then it's really interesting. You really get to know the people in those situations. It's really good fun.
It sounds like it takes a certain something to be a selector. Perhaps I think what I'm saying is you have to be a little bit of a sadist by the sounds of it to come up with something as miserable as waking people up every hour and giving them a silly task.
I'm sure most of the competitors and candidates that got onto the selection weekends would probably agree with you there. Yeah.
And the aim of the national selections at Eastnor was to narrow down from dozens of candidates through to the final 2, or were you looking for a smaller group with reserves and so on?
Yeah, so it varied a little bit each year, but what we tried to do was get from however many people we got onto that first selection weekend, we'd whittle those down to 4 people, and those final 4 would get 2 or 3 weekends of training with us and with Land Rover driving experience. And then those 4 would go to the international selections. And the international selections were overseas in, well, just outside Paris. We had a few there at Chateau Jeanville. And we did a couple over in Turkey, I think, as well. And over there, you've got the final 4 candidates from each country, and they're all thrown in together. But you have 2 selectors from each country as well, following the 4 people around. So I was on one of those selections in Turkey with Joe Ives at the time, and yeah, we followed our candidates around all the pre-arranged, pre-organised stands, if you like, that had special tasks for them to do. There'd be some mechanical like axle in pieces, and they'd have to try and reassemble the bits into the right sort of order. Things like that. There was some orienteering courses. There was some driving, winching exercises, bridge building, and some other stuff. And we'd follow them round. And once you got to that level, the international selections, we already knew by then the strengths and weaknesses of those 4 people. But what we're really looking for is the best team of 2. So it could be any of those 4. So it might be the best one and the worst one if you wanted to rank them in an order of 1 to 4. But if those 2 work together best as a team, that's what really counts, because 1 and 1 is worth more than 2 in that situation when they gel together. So yeah, you're looking for the pair that works best together by that stage.
Perhaps that explains why, kind of over the history of Camel Trophy, there's been quite a few national teams that have been kind of related to each other. Thinking like of Bob and Joe Ives, or the Collins brothers from South Africa, and I think a couple of times, kind of brothers have been in like reserve groups and things like that. So that perhaps explains a little bit about why, from a field of thousands of candidates, 2 people from the same family might be successful.
Yeah. You should ask Bob about the story with him and Joe going on the event, because he'll have a tale to tell about that. It was almost by accident, really, that Joe ended up on it, although he was in the final 6. So yeah, but you're right. And like Bob and Joe, they work together on the farm day in, day out. They know each other almost intimately. They won't mind me saying that. They just know how each other works. So when something goes wrong and you've got to get a vehicle out, they just know what the other one's going to do, and they can anticipate each other. And you're right, brothers that are close, that's always going to be a big advantage. In 95, the pairing that went on that one was Mike Oxley and Rob Connor. Rob actually, he works over here as well now, but the pair of them were flatmates at the time, and they used to train together and everything and play rugby together before they applied for the Camel Trophy. So, they knew each other pretty well. And they got into the final 4, and they were the best pair, at the international selections. They had the advantage of knowing each other so well. Because 3 weeks
That's a useful
is a long time.
Yeah. So let's kind of fast forward to where we are now. You're living in Australia. Could you tell us a little bit about your work and perhaps any kind of Camel Trophy-esque experiences that you have had since Guyana?
Yeah, I guess so. So I've lived in Australia now for 20 years, since 2000. I work for Ford over here, and we're responsible for the Ranger and Everest vehicles. So Ranger, as you know, is a strong 4x4 pickup truck, sold globally now, 189 countries or something. But Yeah, with my Camel Trophy background, and I used to do off-road four-wheel drive trials and things like that, and a bit of dirt biking and stuff. So what I've kind of done within Ford Australia here is got involved onto the four-wheel drive side of things. So I'm spend a lot of time going through all the four-wheel drive system that the Ranger and Everest have, helping with the calibration of the transfer case, the transmission, the powertrain, and also looking at what we call the off-road characteristics. So the ground clearance, suspension articulation, approach angles, departure angles, how things are protected underneath the vehicle, all that sort of stuff. So I've really tried to use my experience and my expertise that I've gained over the years, including the Camel Trophy event and the training that I've had since then, to try and put it into my work and try and make the best four-wheel drive vehicle that I can manage to do. So I work on future models in product development, and yeah, it's been really interesting. So the Ford Bronco that's just been launched over in the US, I've done a fair bit of work on that in the first stages of the prototypes before it moves over to the US for the US market.
So any future kind of models in the design phase, probably top secret, maybe that you can't tell us about? I don't know, maybe an aluminium bodied utility vehicle with 110-inch, maybe permanent 4x4 aluminium body, permanent four-wheel drive, high-low. Yeah, I don't know, anything like that in the pipeline?
Well, I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. It's top secret.
Okay. So, I guess in all a bit more of a serious question. You know, the Ford Ranger and the Land Rover Discovery that you would have driven, 30 years ago in South America, very, very different cars. How do they compare, would you say, a modern Ford Ranger and your 1992 Disco?
Yeah, very different animals, but with some similarities. Still got a solid chassis, still got a live axle at the back. The Ranger has independent front suspension, but that's really because people want good handling or better handling. The Discoveries of my era in '92, they were awesome off-road, just fantastic off-road. But on-road, they're comfortable, but you can't really hurry them along around the corners. You need a bit of patience. They're lovely to drive, but yes, sort of people's expectations have moved on since then. And I think with the modern four-wheel drives and the Ranger in particular, I think we're able to match the off-road capability through new technologies and some extra bits and pieces, but increase the on-road usability, if you like, and how it is to live with day in, day out in your normal commute to work and that sort of thing. And we've still got very, very similar off-road capability. And I'm not particularly plugging Ford, obviously. I'm a bit biased, but I think all manufacturers have come that way. Range Rover and Discovery and Defender now, they've all moved in that direction towards really a sign of the times that there's less off-roading available, true off-roading. And most people, they want that capability in their back pocket just in case they ever needed it and for bragging rights down the pub. But in reality, they're spending 99% of their time on the road, driving in normal conditions, where you want comfort and safety and security and connectivity and all that sort of thing. So, look, I've still got a 95 Disco Series 1, and it's a V8 petrol because they're more prevalent over here. And I love it. I've got a 2-inch lift kit and a winch and a bull bar, and that's about it. Yeah, and I love to drive that around and take it here and there. And I'll always be a Land Rover Tragic. I'm afraid I've got a Series 1 as well that gets occasional use. So a bit of a hobby. Yeah, so I think I drive a Ranger day to day, and I've got 2 hobby car Land Rovers that obviously need a lot more love and attention.
And if I said to you, I want to fly you and a vehicle into Guyana, there's 1,400-kilometer journey for you. You have a choice: your Series 1 Defender, Series 1 Discovery, Ford Ranger, or the brand new Land Rover Defender. Which one would you choose and why?
Ooh, quite a tough question. I would say I'd probably, if it was a Camel spec Discovery and it was new, I think I'd choose that. But you know, my Discovery Series 1 is now 25 years old, so it would need a bit of nursing, I think, to get through. The Ranger and the new Defender, they're kind of torn by brand loyalties, you know. Yeah, what I'd really love to do is try the Defender, the new Defender, because I know what the Ranger can do, and that's great. The Defender, I've seen it at the showroom here, but I haven't sat in it yet, haven't driven it, and yeah, one of those with some mud tyres on, I reckon would be my choice. I think. Yep.
I think maybe the only solution to that unanswerable question is perhaps to take all 3 and try all 3 of them out.
Yeah, perfect. Yep.
So perhaps we'll start to draw this to a close. I wonder if you could kind of round things off by just kind of telling us what kind of is your most enduring memory of Camel Trophy Guyana '92. What's going to stick with you the most? You know, what's the memory that really takes you back those kind of 28 years?
I think it's friendships and camaraderie. You know, on the event, you're thrown in with a whole bunch of people you don't know, and you have to work together just to get through the convoy bit. The competition part is good fun, but it's kind of a different part of your brain. And the convoy section is what I really enjoyed. You know, when you're doing 22 hours a day, hard driving, winching, you're covered in mud, not eating enough really. I think I lost about 12 kilos on the actual event from start to finish. I'll probably put it back on again within a week with beer. But yeah, just that camaraderie and sense of achievement when you're all mucking together to do a particular task. I'll give you one little example. This was on international selections that I was on in for the 92 event. It was at Chateau Jeanville, and there was a task that we were given. There was this massive hill. We jogged around to the bottom of this massive hill, and it was probably 30 degrees. It looked like it was almost vertical. And there was a Discovery parked at the bottom, and the scenario given was that the Discovery had broken down. We had to get it to the top of the hill so it could be repaired, and we could use the equipment that we found with the car, and that was it. There were 4 people from each of 16 countries, so 64 of us there. We didn't have another vehicle, just this one, and the engine wouldn't run. You couldn't use the winch. Well, the hill was a good 50, 60 meters tall, anyway, long. And so we had a look at the equipment, we laid it all out, and you can imagine 64 competitors or candidates at that stage, you know, eager to make a good impression. And we Gareth and I pretty much took over the running of it, but we decided pretty quickly that there was a massive rope and a massive pulley block, and at the top of the hill there was a tree. So we worked out that what we could do is run the rope up to the top of the hill, around the pulley block attached to the tree, and back down the hill. And it would come about halfway down the hill. And the Discovery weighs 2 tons, thereabouts. How much does 64 people weigh? A bit more than 2 tons. And so we all just pulled the rope down the hill, and it just pushed the Discovery up the hill in about 5 minutes flat. It was beautiful, and at the end of that, the sense of achievement was just awesome. Everyone was high-fiving everyone, and yeah, whoops of joy. It was great, and just that camaraderie is what sticks in my mind.
Well, thank you very much for describing all of your memories from Camel Trophy, both in Guyana '92 and afterwards through the selection process. Tim, you've been very generous with your time and with your memories, and I hope the next time we speak it'll be around the campfire at Eastnor Castle, sharing some polo mints and a pint, and telling some more stories at some sort of Camel Trophy Club event. But thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, no worries at all. Thanks for inviting me. It's a shame the event couldn't happen because of COVID, and yeah, I'm happy to contribute this way. I hope everyone enjoys it, and yeah, great. And thanks to you, Chris, and your team for organising the event, even though it got cancelled in the end. I really do look forward to to coming over for CT 41 or 42 or whatever it ends up being.
We have the plans in place, sitting on a folder on a shelf somewhere. We just need to dust them off and make it happen. So, Tim Postgate, thank you very much.